Sometimes it's school culture, right? It's language norms.
Yes.
So it's things that people just say all the time. This is what we say at our school.
Yes, yes. And it almost is as like it becomes like a bingo board of
Mhm.
like buzzwords in education.
Yeah.
That could be a bingo game like during a staff meeting. But yes, some of these phrases again, and we could just kind of hand them down and we regurgitate them. And then when new teachers, new leaders come into our systems, like
Mhm.
they start taking on those language choices too. And it's like we want to kind of pause it and disrupt it a little bit.
Just a little bit, just disrupt just a little bit.
Just a little bit, just like throw it all in a blender and like change it completely.
No, just a little bit. Okay, okay. So, all right. Well, can you give me some examples? What are some
Yeah.
things that we are seeing?
Yes. So, especially again, like my lens is always that multilingual education lens, and so I've served in a like bilingual settings and dual language settings specifically, and as students are navigating two or more languages simultaneously, like
Mhm.
their brains are doing a million beautiful things. But sometimes when we sit down and we talk about student data, we'll say things like, oh, this student is low in both languages.
Mm,
Whew. And that
mm,
statement, anytime we say anything like period, like a student is low, period, like that's really problematic, right? Like numbers can be high and low, percentages can be high and low, but children cannot be.
right.
And so we really want to shift that language choice and really like show what's actually happening. Like, no, a student is not low in both languages. They're developing in two languages simultaneously. Like, let's call that out and call attention to what the student is doing and like honor that. It's a great thing and we should highlight that. And so we got to kind of flip that language a little bit.
Let me ask you this question, because I could see somebody arguing, "Oh, well, this is just a matter of semantics." What type of process, or you kind of mentioned bias earlier? What type of process does this change when we change our language?
Language often get like speaks life to our beliefs and our mindsets. And again, sometimes people will say things like, oh, that it's just words, but words have power and like words have impact. And it kind of goes back to those conversations of like impact versus intent, right?
Mhm,
Like, well,
mhm.
I didn't mean it like that. Okay, but it can be taken right
Right.
by a variety of audiences, by a variety of folks around the table here, in a lot of different ways. So we have to like honor the way that our words can impact, and it really impacts the way that we serve our students. If we're always talking about them when they're not in the room and we're saying things like they're low or they're not motivated, that really affects the way when we come back into our spaces and we look at a student, we're saying, oh, this student is low. And so I'm going to lower the bar, lower expectations. Or again, I'm just going to keep regurgitating the same conversation of like, oh, that student's not motivated. And it's again, a source of frustration rather than how am I empowering this child?
It's like when we say affirmations, right? We say positive things. You stand in the mirror, you say all these positive things. I'm this, I'm that. So if we're saying this about our students in a negative way, imagine what type of process a teacher might take. We're just going to assume unconsciously,
Yeah.
right? But when we're saying positive things, like you said, they're developing,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to, oh, they're low, but no, they're striving, they're aspiring, they're doing these things that are, some people say, approaching.
Mhm.
Some
Mhm.
people refer to their students in general as scholars,
Yeah.
right? There is no student, no, they're scholars. Everyone here are scholars, and just think about the culture that creates, the school's culture that it creates when that type of language is being utilized every day.
Yes, yes. And I always think about this because again, like when we gather as educators and leaders around a table and we're talking about like a particular student in mind, and the student's not in the room with us, but we're saying all these things, we're throwing all this language out into the air. What if the child was in the room, or what if their family was
Mm.
in the room with us? Would we still say those things? It just kind of it gives us a moment of pause, like, oh, like this is it's a good practice to just to have that reflective language, time and space.